Infinity Nation and beyond, we look at the status of your digital landscape and how it affects the growth and profitability of your business. On the show, we will be talking to business leads, partners in the e-commerce world, as well as some of our own specialist team to give you actionable insights and find solutions to help you on your growth journey today. We will consider new ideas, stretch our mindsets beyond the status quo, and in the process discover how to gain an edge on the competition and drive some great results.
Hi, and welcome to the latest edition of the Infinity Nation Podcast. Today with me, we have Bobbie, Group Marketing Director from GFS, and we are going to discuss the complexities of selling into Europe, how this has impacted UK e-commerce, and we will give you ways to overcome these challenges and reboot your sales into Europe. Hi, Bobbie. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Al. That was a really good introduction. I noticed you didn't use my surname, right? Because you're scared about pronouncing it. It's Ttooulis.
You've caught me.
I knew it. So hi, everyone. And yeah, let's hopefully everyone will get something out of this session.
I'm sure they will. So I think one of the main things that we've been discussing in our recent interactions is the impact of Brexit and sort of the changes in the VAT rules in terms of UK businesses selling into Europe. So love to hear from your side, as you're probably a bit more at the coalface on this than we are, what you've been seeing and the impacts you've been seeing.
Nothing has sent bigger shockwaves through businesses as when suddenly on the 1st of January, the borders went up, let's say, across Europe, which meant that for the first time ever, we suddenly changed from having the luxury of borderless trade with Europe, which means that, we could import, export, send parcels to Europe, bring back returns without having to deal with customs documentation and all of that. And then suddenly on the 1st of January, the borders went up. So businesses needed to be ready for being able to trade under completely new circumstances with Europe, which meant that, when your goods get to the border, your parcels in this context, so you're sending a parcel to a customer to France, for example, it gets to the border at France and the customs officials need to have the proper paperwork there that shows them what the goods are, what the harmonization codes are for each of those products that you've sold, what the value is, all this mandatory information that's required with every parcel in order to get it through the border. And it's no surprise then that, I think it was reported that 47% of UK businesses either stopped trading or drastically reduced their trading with the EU because of this. And we saw obviously it's got better. GFS, we are the industry's largest provider of multi-carrier parcel services, in the UK and international. So we saw, lots of things happening at that time. It was reported in the news. We saw how there were backlogs of parcels, at shipping ports, at borders, where the documentation wasn't correct. So parcels were being sent back to where they came from. And of course, that meant a lot of disappointed and unhappy customers. They were waiting for their goods to arrive. So to say it was mayhem is probably playing it down a bit, but it did feel like mayhem. Yeah.
I don't think it really helped with the decision being taken, almost as late as Christmas Eve. The government sort of ratified it was all going ahead. It just left no time at all for anyone to really, talk about leaving it to the 11th and a half hour. It really was. So you were breaking up for Christmas and then coming back to a new world in the new year of complete change, where there was 6-10 days to try and plan for it. I know there'd been a lot of encouragement to try and plan way in advance. but what the actuals were never really firmed up, was it?
Absolutely.
It was a nightmare.
Yeah, it was a nightmare, and you're absolutely right. We saw a lot of businesses, because there was so much confusion over what steps needed to be taken, not just the delay in getting information, but information that was coming through that wasn't really clear at all. Because were we going to get a deal or weren't we going to get a deal? And so there was a lot of this waiting, or businesses just stuck their head in the sand. What we were trying to do with our customers was plan for the worst case scenario, which is we don't have a deal and we will have to trade with the EU dealing with borders, which meant get yourselves set up for trading under, was it World? I can't remember what it was called now, but trading
World
with the
Trade
EU.
Agreement.
Yeah. So it was, and that meant making sure that, businesses had all their stock and inventory, all had harmonization codes, so that information was available to go on to the customs documentation, so they could comply with that. But yeah, a lot of businesses just weren't quite ready. And even those that were, from day one, there was still a lot of teething problems. If you were shipping into Germany, it was a nightmare because the Germans would do everything by the book and they wanted to make sure everything was ticked. If you were shipping to somewhere else, it wouldn't be so, stringent. So it was difficult.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned Germany, because we had some customers selling there. And if you went via the road, it was definitely tricky, but there were one or two couriers that flew stuff. So you missed all the queues in the ports. So that definitely was our preferred route in when we sort of identified that was happening.
More costly to do that, because there were carriers that would, come to for those businesses that weren't ready, there's always a solution, right? A carrier that would take your goods in and be the importer of record or whatever, but it would cost you. And when you're operating on tight margins, you can't afford to be doing that. So it's not a long-term solution.
Yeah. And culturally, it seems from the data we see that the Germans are happier to return or order extra and return some. So then the reverse of that stuff coming back was equally a nightmare.
Exactly.
So it made it. And I think that's. Yeah, I think going back to your point, though, I think that made a lot of people reticent, and selling into EU almost just priced itself out of the affordability in terms of margins, and thus the reason I think we're here discussing today that a lot of people have pulled out of that market, even selling to Ireland. I know some of our clients pulled out just because of the hassle factor.
That's it. And I think it wasn't just the cost, it was actually the pain of doing it. And also, it's not just the pain of getting it there. You've still got to deal with borders and customs documentation when you get your return. So it's both ways. But then the worst thing was that no sooner were businesses trying to get their head around what they needed to do differently to be able to reboot selling into the EU. And then on the 1st of July, everybody was hit with the VAT reforms that was not part of Brexit, but was rolled out, something that's happening globally. But on the 1st of July, the new VAT reforms went live across Europe, which meant that on top of everything that we had to deal with, it now meant that anything that was sold in the UK was subject to VAT. Whereas before, there was a minimum threshold of 22 euros. Okay, that was abolished on the 1st of July, which meant that literally everything, regardless of VAT, if you sell it in France, you have to declare VAT in France. If you sell it in Germany, you have to collect VAT at the German, German level, and then also, do your VAT return in Germany as well, which again, add that on top of everything else. And if you're an e-commerce business selling through, to multiple countries across Europe, that's huge. That didn't apply to businesses that are selling on marketplaces. They get a bit of a a slightly different situation in that the marketplaces are responsible for the VAT side of it. But even so, most retailers are going to be multi-channel. They're going to be selling through their own website, direct from their own websites. They're going to be selling on marketplaces. So either way, whichever way you look at it, selling to the EU has become extremely complicated and potentially costly.
Yeah. And so being at the coalface, how do you think UK businesses have coped with this plethora of change that they've been thrown at them?
I think when it came to Brexit, dealing with borders suddenly, like I said, there was some, and it's borne out by the statistics that I mentioned earlier as well. A lot of at the beginning, a lot of businesses paused, right, because they realised that they couldn't ship for whatever reason. They weren't ready, or it was too complicated, whatever. So at the beginning, a lot of businesses just stopped altogether when they're just trying to get their head around things. Some were more advanced than others, but now we have seen a lot of businesses trying to reboot those EU sales. Some of the larger businesses, some of our larger customers, we've actually seen them actually move their fulfillment into Europe. So, for example, we have a number of customers where we're doing fulfillment, where we take their products and we warehouse them, we pick, pack, fulfill within our facilities in Netherlands, and then cover Europe that way. That way, they don't have to, that's intra-EU shipping. So they can avoid the complexities of dealing with documentation and stuff. But for the smaller businesses, that's not really a feasible option for them, because A, it's very costly to be able to do that, to be able to find a partner that will do fulfillment within the EU, because you can imagine demand has soared for that. But also you have to have a certain volume of orders, of trade, to be able to make that feasible and profitable. So, that hasn't solved the problems for many businesses. When it came to VAT, dealing with all the VAT complexities of potentially having to charge VAT and declare VAT in every single country that you're selling to, one thing that's been great has been when they launched what they call the one-stop shop service. Okay, so we see a number of businesses overcoming a lot of the VAT hassle by registering for one-stop shop and using the import one-stop shop scheme to make VAT a lot simpler and make it easier to get your parcels, to be able to ship to the EU. But there's a lot of confusion around that as well. And I don't think it has really, businesses have really seen the benefit of that yet, because there's still quite a lot of confusion around it.
Yeah, I think one-stop shop, or IOSS is also referred to. I think, as you say, it doesn't seem clear cut. And just going back to your point on the Netherlands, I think they were very switched on in those early days to encourage or make it very easy for you to go and set up a warehouse or be part of a conglomerate of warehouses, to have an address there to overcome your shipping into Europe. And as you say, if you're of the right size, whether you ship from China, turned left to the UK, or turned right to the Netherlands as it came up in the channel, didn't really make any difference. So I think we definitely saw a number of people go and set up entities over there to enable that, to ship some stock straight to that solution. But going back to one-stop shop, what businesses need to do to take advantage of this? Because I think you're right in terms of it's been talked about or mentioned a lot, but I still feel there's ambiguity about it. There's not clarity on it, and I would still say there's a number of businesses sort of sitting on the fence, going, "Do you want to go back into Europe or not? Is it worth our while? Is it not?" So, I mean, I think Germany is one of the leading e-commerce economies in the world. So it seems mad not to be trying to harness it, but at the same time, as you said earlier, need to do it in a margin sympathetic way. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
any tips or advice?
Well, the first thing is the first point I want to pick up on is that you're absolutely right. Businesses need to grow, keep selling. And if they're not going to be, if they're going to stop selling into Europe, which I think is probably one of our largest trading partners, I think 43% of UK exports go to EU. If as a business, you have to keep selling, you have to keep growing. If you're going to ignore the Europe, then you've got to find that growth somewhere else. And if you're selling outside of Europe, you're still going to need to deal with borders and all the complexities that we talked about, customs documentation, etc. That's not going to go away. So, the obvious thing is try and simplify, try and reboot your EU sales. And the one-stop shop scheme allows businesses, was introduced to simplify VAT, right? Which meant that if I'm selling in 10 countries across Europe with one-stop shop, I can register, decide which country in the EU I want to register with, because every EU country has an iOS portal where you can log in and register your business. You can decide, pick any one you want. And then by registering with that, you will get your iOS number, an identification number, which means that the benefit of that is that you can sell across all of Europe, 27 countries in Europe, but you only have to submit one monthly VAT return. That's one thing. The second thing is that when your goods arrive at the border, so when your parcels arrive at the border in wherever it's going, France, Germany, whatever, when they get to the border, those parcels, you have to show your iOS number on the customs documentation. And what that tells the customs officials is that the goods are taken care of, right? So when they land, they are VAT exempt, which means that those goods, those parcels can be cleared through customs, don't have to go through VAT clearance. The good thing is as well is that if they know if the parcels arrive and they are VAT exempt, then your customer in France is not going to get a nasty call from someone saying, I've got your goods here, but we can't give them to you until you've paid X pounds on VAT. That is not a great customer experience. So it's much smoother.
No.
And from an operational, in terms of the customer experience, operationally, it's, it reduces the amount of, administration and everything that you have to do. But what it does mean is that not only do you have to register, get your iOS number, show that, ensure that iOS number is on the customs documentation, but you also need to be delivering it or shipping it on an iOS service. So we offer a whole range of iOS services from express to standard, whatever, but you have to be, the carrier service you're using has got to be iOS carrier service so that they can then quote the iOS number. When your customers buy something at checkout, you have to, on your website, you have to calculate and display the VAT that they're going to be charged. Okay, it has to be calculated and displayed to the customer at the point of checkout. So you're going to have to look at how do you build that functionality into your website? What technology do you need? Because it's got to be dynamic because VAT changes, right? It's not just different for each country, but it might get updated. So there's some adjustments you need to make to your website, to the checkout process. And then there's adjustments you need to make to your shipping process by selecting iOS services, being able to include iOS number on your documentation. But, the benefits are that, it's a much smoother process. Now, the downside is some businesses get concerned about the additional VAT that goes on top, having to charge European customers VAT and how that might price them out and may not be as attractive. But it is what it is. We have to do that. And from a customer experience perspective, we always say to customers, to our retailers, be transparent. Consumers want transparency. They need to know up front what it's going to cost them. Because what's worse is if you ship it to them duty free and then it gets to their country and they get a surprise phone call, like I said, from the post office saying, you need to come and pay this VAT. That's not a great customer experience at all.
Probably just return it, wouldn't you, and say, "Can I have my money back?" So it's a lot of effort for nothing.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what happened. I think that there was the reports of the number of orders that were being basically refused. So they weren't even accepted. They never even arrived at the doorstep. They were refused and then didn't even get past border.
Yeah,
there's a huge amount.
Okay.
Yeah. So like Brilliant. I said, I think that iOS, if you want, you've got to deal with both sides. You've got to deal with if you're shipping into Europe and returning, because you're crossing the border both ways, you're going to have customs compliance to deal with. So that's where you need your harmonization codes. You need to make sure that the correct documentation with the correct information accompanies every parcel. And then you've got to deal with VAT compliance as well. And that's the piece where iOS comes into it. That's probably could be enough to put a lot of businesses off, because, it's not just well, how do I do this? What do I need to do this? But, some businesses may not even have the know-how or the expertise to even be aware that there are carriers that can provide these services, or there's technology that can, enable the VAT calculation, or, shipping software that allows businesses to print labels with all the information on there, as well as the customs documentation. It can be quite overwhelming.
Bobbie, is there for the listeners, is there anywhere they could go to find a checklist or some, like top things for them to check out to see if it is worth their efforts, or any sources that you can recommend?
Yeah, I think the gov.co.uk website's got a lot of information on there about trading. And I can't remember the other website, but there's another website which is another government or official website which is all around trading. But definitely the .gov.uk website is a great place to start, because there's other sources and links from there that you can go to, but it's got everything on there.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for that, Bobbie. Tell us a bit more about GFS and where listeners sort of can find out a bit more information about you, how you could maybe help them, and how they could get in touch.
So GFS, hopefully we've got some listeners that are already customers of GFS. So GFS, we were set up 21 years ago. We were the very first multi-carrier provider. By that meaning that rather than go to 10 different carriers, they could come to one carrier, us, and we would be able to provide all the carrier services under one roof. So since then, we've become the largest multi-carrier services provider. So we take care of parcels all over the world, UK and international. And we like to think of ourselves as the first port of call, really, for any e-commerce business that's looking for a delivery partner. And we're not just selling services. We take pride in solving a lot of the problems that our customers have, and be it through our expertise. So, Europe is common ground for us. It's an area we know very well, not just international, but Europe. So we're able to make it easier by bundling together all the different iOS elements you need to be able to ship to Europe. We can provide the technology, the iOS services. It's our problem to solve together with the customer, if you like, how they get their how they can ship into various countries. Oh, and of course, if they GFS Deliver, that is our website. So we've got everything on there. So www.gfsdeliver.com.
Brilliant. Bobbie, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for all your insights and tips. Much appreciated. And I look forward to catching up with you soon.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Al.
Speak soon. Thanks, Bobbie. Bye.
Bye.